What's happening everyone, my name is Alex and welcome back to a new review. Today we have another ROG device from Cubot called the King Kong 3. So this is a phone that costs somewhere around $160 and this phone is shockproof, waterproof, ice-proof, so you could basically take this phone anywhere and it should be able to survive. Now, me personally didn't drop the phone a million times and I didn't take this on my latest swimming adventure, however I did take the phone in the shower and the phone works fine afterwards. We also have an NFC chip inside this device, so that means that you can make payments to the phone and you can also transfer files to other devices, and we also get a big 6000 mAh battery. Now, on one charge you can get between 2 and 4 days. Now, of course it really depends how you use the phone, and out of that you get about 10 to 12 hours of screen on time. But as I said, it really depends how you use the phone, because if you're playing a lot of games on it, it may not last that long. Even if you have to charge the phone, that only takes about 2 hours and 20 minutes through the USB-C port that we have at the bottom. The USB-C port is covered by a rubber flap, and of course you're gonna have to use the charger that comes in the box. And talking about that USB-C port, the phone also supports OTG, so you can plug in like a USB stick and the phone can read whatever you have on that USB stick. Now, what's interesting about this phone is the fact that the phone is able to work in the US as well, but that's only based on those bands that we have available. I haven't actually tried the phone in the US, and just based on those bands that show up, the phone should work with some US carriers, but definitely make your own research before buying this device and make sure that it actually works with your carrier. The phone itself looks a bit different than most phones available on the market. We have rubber, metal and glass, but overall I think it looks pretty good for a ROG device. It's also somewhat heavier, it weighs about 280 grams, and if you keep this in your pocket, well, it will feel a bit big, mostly if you're not used to having big things in your pocket like me. On the front and all the way at the top of the device, we have an LED notification light. We also have the speaker, and the speaker is loud enough so you can hear most conversations without any issues, and we also have an 8 megapixel front-facing camera. The picture quality from the front-facing camera is decent enough if you have plenty of light, so the pictures are somewhat sharp, but as soon as you don't have enough light, the pictures become kind of grainy and blurry, so not ideal to take pictures in low light with this device. The screen is a 5.5-inch IPS display that has a resolution of 1440 by 720, so technically a 720p resolution. But before judging this screen that badly, remember that the latest iPhone that costs somewhere around $750 has a somewhat similar resolution, so keep that in mind. So this screen can register up to 5 touches at the same time, and the screen sensitivity is pretty good. The viewing angles are really good, the colors are nice and vibrant, but the screen doesn't get super bright. So if you take the phone outside and it's super sunny, it may be a bit difficult to see. But overall, for a phone around $160, I think the screen looks good enough. The sides of the phone are made out of metal, and of course that gives the phone a more unique look and feel. On the left hand side we have the slot for the SIM card, and this device can take either 2 SIM cards or a SIM card and an SD card. And talking about that SD card, the phone can use an SD card as internal storage, so you can install apps on the SD card as well. And just below that we have a button that should be able to launch any app that you program it to. Now, me personally, I looked through all the settings in the phone and I cannot find any settings for that button, so I can't really say if it works or not. If you hold the button pressed for a couple of seconds, you feel the phone vibrating, but I cannot find the settings for it, so I'm not sure where those are. On the other side we have the power button and the volume keys, and the buttons of course are made out of metal and they are also very nice and clicky. On the back of the phone we have one speaker, and the speaker gets loud enough, however it's pointing away from you and it's also somewhat easy to cover it whenever you're holding the phone, so keep that in mind, not the best positioning for the speaker. We also have a fingerprint scanner, and the fingerprint scanner is accurate every single time, but it may not be the quickest out there, but quick enough for a phone around $160. And just above that we have 2 cameras. One of them is a 2 megapixel sensor and the other one is a 16 megapixel sensor. Now, if you're gonna take pictures with the bokeh effect or the portrait mode, how it's called on other devices, well, those pictures don't look that great because the bokeh effect is kind of artificial, so we basically get a circle and some blurring around that circle, so that bokeh effect is not great. But if you take pictures, regular pictures, those ones look great as long as you have plenty of light. Even the pictures in low light look decent enough for the price, but they are a bit grainy here and blurry there, so the phone is okay for pictures, but definitely not the best that I've seen. So the phone is powered by the MediaTek Helio P23, which is not a bad processor by any means, and that processor is also paired with 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of internal storage. Out of that 64 gigs of internal storage, we have about 54 gigs left after the operating system, but as I mentioned earlier, you can always install an SD card and expand the internal storage. The phone is also running Android 8.1, and since it's running stock Android, there isn't much holding the phone back, and the scores that we get on the Antutu benchmark and the Geekbench 4 are pretty high and appropriate for the Helio MediaTek P23. The UI is very light, therefore scrolling through your apps, opening new apps, scrolling through your screens, pretty much everything is done very fluidly, and you wouldn't say that this is a phone that costs only about $160. Now, when you start opening apps like Facebook, you will notice a bit of lag scrolling through your feed, but not horrible, and the phone is definitely usable as it is. The Instagram app does pretty good. On the YouTube app, the maximum resolution that you can select for videos is 720p, but that's the maximum resolution of the screen. And if you use Chrome, scrolling up, scrolling down, zooming in, zooming out works decent enough. So really the performance of this phone is decent enough for the price. The phone does pretty good for gaming as well, but of course it will depend what games you're playing on this device, but I was surprised to see that even PUBG did really well on it. Now of course the graphics settings were set to minimum, so they weren't set to high, but for PUBG with the minimum graphics settings the phone does perform very well. So of course it will depend what game you're playing on it, and the battery life will be impacted by the games and so on, but overall for the price the phone does really good for gaming as well. The GPS unit inside it is not the quickest that I've seen, so it takes between 5 and 15 seconds to find your location, and depending where you are, you may see the phone researching your location. Again, it really depends on where you go. As for sensors, we have all the sensors that you would find in other more expensive devices, including a gyroscope. Moving on to connectivity, we have 4G connectivity, dual band Wi-Fi and NFC as I mentioned earlier. Here in Canada I was able to use the phone on 2G, 3G and 4G, and as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, you should be able to use this phone with some US carriers based on the bands that show up. The call quality is also pretty good, so no complaints about that, and the speeds over the 4G network and the dual band Wi-Fi are okay, but definitely not the best that I've seen. And it's time to conclude this video. So for about $160, this phone offers really good value. So first of all, we get a phone that's waterproof, shockproof, we get a phone that gets some great battery life, we have NFC, we have fast charging, we have a decent enough screen. The resolution could have been better, but I guess the price would have been higher. We get NFC, and overall the performance is pretty decent for the price, but the cameras aren't the best out there. So that is really the only downside I see to this phone, the cameras and the speaker that's on the back, and well, only one speaker. So if you're looking for a phone that's almost indestructible, this could be a good choice. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did like it, press that like button, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.